You don't want them to feel defensive, because when people are defensive, they lock up, right? You want to focus on a couple of core things. The first of which, 100%, is being you want them to feel they have to prove themselves to you. I know this sounds weird and arbitrary, but it's actually so important, okay? Whenever there is a conversation being had where it doesn't feel as though both people are equally invested, a power dynamic is established. If one person really wants to have a convo, but the other person doesn't and isn't that interested, the person who's less interested is in a relative position of power because they're indicating disinterest. In other words, the other person has to prove why it's worth both their time to discuss this. Your overinvestment is to their benefit, and their overinvestment is to your benefit. You want to be calm. You want to be no more engaged than they are, because if you are, you're giving them permission and encouraging them effectively to double down and persist in the beliefs or things they're saying that you don't like. You can imagine this pretty easily, right? So we've all seen examples of this online, right? If you are a progressive and you see somebody online who is just kind of being casually problematic, I don't know, maybe they're being a bit racist or something, and you go over there and you're like, that is extremely racist of you, and I cannot believe you have done this, and here are the reasons why, and here is the evidence, and blah, blah, blah. How often has this worked? Seriously, think in your entire life, how many times has direct, overt, preachy confrontation changed a mind? Never. I've never seen this happen. It doesn't happen. Okay, no, wipe it clean from your mind. It doesn't happen. But you might notice that there is another strategy, one that people on the left have gotten better at using, that actually is more effective. And it's the kind of subtle social shaming that is associated with unequal interest in a conversation. So say that somebody online says something casually racist, not like horrifically, deliberately racist, but let's say racially inconsiderate. And somebody, maybe even you, replies, wow, kind of cringe, bro. Now, the person who made that inconsiderate, racist message, maybe they weren't intending to be a bad person. They just said something that was, not great to say. So maybe they feel a bit taken aback. Maybe they see a kind of casual disregard for their position as a challenge in some way to the sincerity of what they believe, how firm their beliefs are, how right their beliefs are. But if they engage with that, what exactly are they going to do? Now, I've seen this happen a million times. Not every time, nothing's guaranteed, but often. A person says something inconsiderate. People respond with light mockery, maybe joking disregard, maybe like oh, cool, wow. Like they're indicating two things. One, they don't like what you said, but also, really importantly, they don't care that much. You don't go in there to over-explain why you think what they said was wrong, right? You just indicate you don't like it, but like, eh. And if they reply to you, then you can reply back going like, bro, just like don't do that thing. And if they continue to engage, you notice a successful pattern emerges. The more the person who criticized them indicates disinterest, non-engagement, the more likely they are to feel as though they have to over-explain their position. The best example of this that I've seen is asking people to explain dog whistles. So, for instance, do you know the pit bull dog whistle? This is when somebody will post a picture of a pit bull, or any dog, I guess, and they'll say, isn't it curious that like 500% of dog attacks are done by pit bulls, even though they only represent 10% of the dog population? No. Now, anybody who's posting a meme, you all get, I assume, what the implication is there. Anybody who posts something like that, if you like try to preachily explain that they're racist, it's not going to work because they know that they're racist. Like they know that. Like you've seen that, right? Where somebody does something bad, and then a person responds with "You're bad," and they're like, well, "Yeah." We saw this back in 2016 with Donald Trump, right? Like Hillary Clinton was like, deplorable MAGA voters. Donald Trump, he's a bad man. It's like, I don't care. All you're doing is making them feel cool for being bad, frankly, by acting like a paternalistic, nanny who they're defying by being bad, right? But if you asked, hypothetically, if you asked that pit bull meme dog whistle person, what does that mean? Like, sincerely, what does that mean? I don't get it. Haha, smiley face. In most cases, in real life, they wouldn't respond. But imagine they did, right? There are very few ways that they can respond to that in a way that doesn't implicate themselves. Imagine, for example, if they were like, oh, you know what I mean. You're like, well, no, I don't. What do you mean? And they're like, well, black people. Do you understand the rhetorical problem on their end? The artifice of the dog whistle crumbles if they're forced to explain it. You understand? Now, this doesn't happen that often in real life because people who deliberately dog whistle don't usually explain the dog whistle to defend themselves. But the fact that over-explaining or a request for clarification puts them in a position where if they did do so, they would look quite silly, that's the core of what I'm talking about here. Like if somebody in your friend group makes an inconsiderate comment and you ask them to explain themselves, what do you mean by that? I don't get it. So often this shuts down casual racism. I mean it. This is like, especially in the workplace, if you have coworkers who are just kind of casually bigoted, all you have to do, in many cases, not all, but in many, is to just go like, oh, what do you mean by that? And they will clam up. They will just literally, like, it seems unreasonable. Why would that work so well? Well, the reason for it is because normally when people have bad beliefs, right, they have them as a kind of external, unexamined, let's say, ephemeral, emotional position. They're not rooted in a set of concrete logical arguments. So if a person is casually racist, casually sexist, casually transphobic, they can't root this back to the axiomatic level. They're not going to start explaining like fundamental ethics or like the meta-ethical presuppositions they've made to arrive at the beliefs they hold that made them believe the thing that, no, they're not going to do that. Almost nobody can do that. And thank God, because life would be really annoying if people did that all the time. But these tenuous beliefs they hold, these biases, these concerns, they suddenly look really silly when they're taken out of the joking artifice, when they're put in the spotlight, when they're given the space to explain themselves. You know what I mean? You've probably been the victim of this tactic at some point, haven't you? Have you ever done something that was kind of inconsiderate or rude? We all have. And then somebody asks you, why'd you do that? Now, there are two ways to respond. There are only two ways to respond to this, okay? One of them is to do what I do and double down. where you're like, why'd I do that? Did what? What do you mean? I'm just having fun. Right, you can do that. And right, many people do this, okay? Or you immediately feel like a jackass and kind of whimper out an apology. Really, are those not basically the only two roads to go down? Because if you've been rude, even rude by your own definition, you're not going to construct a logical argument to explain why you've been, like, you're not going to go like, okay, well, first of all, like, maybe if you feel there's some justification and you actually weren't being rude, you're only accused of being rude. But if you know you've been rude, it's doubling down or whimpering an apology, right? And I don't think a lot of people are willing to, like, hardcore double down on, yeah, I'm super racist, if they're called out on being kind of like casually insensitive about race. I know that online it feels like they might do that because Twitter right now is completely inundated with neo-Nazis that Elon Musk is deliberately boosting. So if you go online right now, it might be like, no, every person with reactionary beliefs is willing to fully commit and defend them. It's not true in real life. That's actually like an incredibly small portion of the population. I promise you. In real life, people don't like having their biases confronted, they don't like having to explain themselves, and they are self-conscious when put in a position where they feel they have to justify their behavior. And all of these things, this is what you need to do. What I'm talking about right now is, that is, even before the real conversation has been had, even before you put forward any positions, make any arguments, even express any discontent, you have to make sure the context of the conversation is working in your favor. Let's say you're at a party with family, family gathering or whatever. An uncle makes an inappropriate joke about gay people. You're gay, you feel maybe you were a bit targeted by that. If you went up to your uncle right there and said, I do not appreciate that comment, I feel that was homophobic and such, You know, maybe if your uncle was a nice guy, he'll kowtow right there. But I bet you in a lot of cases, instead, he'll laugh it off. Why are you so sensitive? Come on, I was just joking. You're overreacting, that kind of thing. You've all been told that at some point in your lives. That happens to a lot of people when they try to confront reactionary people in their family or friend circle. But if you went up, maybe not right then, but maybe later in the party or after in the party or just some point in the future, and you indicated in a almost dispassionate way, I didn't really like that. I thought that kind of sucked. And just left it at that, I bet he'd be a lot less likely to do the haha, you're so oversensitive thing. Maybe he still will. Again, there are no guarantees. But I bet you he'd be less likely to. Because now the immediate defensive reaction that he would have, which is that you're being oversensitive, you're just reacting in the heat of the moment, that's gone now. Because you waited and you said it calmly. Now, again, maybe he plays it off, but if he doesn't, he might try to defend himself. He might try to explain himself. And that's what you want, because a dispassionate comment from you has now elicited from him a passionate or at least engaged response. And depending on how things play out, how sincere he is or how much you feel he cares about your opinion, it's possible for you to play this right there or to continue playing it up down the road. You can say, and you can delay the conversation. You can say, I didn't want to argue about this with you. I'm just saying, you know, and then like walk off. That'll burn in him. You know, if your uncle cares about you at all, like that'll hit. This, like, I'm just disappointed. Like, I'm not mad, I'm disappointed. People hate feeling like they're the victim of that. Because now, exactly, Nikolai Prime, if a confrontation is to happen, you now have the upper hand. Because they're the one who has to initiate it. They're the one who has to justify it. And if no confrontation is had from this, you're still in a better position. Because now, whenever your uncle does something like that, makes an insensitive comment about gay people, he'll feel your eyes burning on the back of his neck.